Welcome to the Money Metals Midweek Memo, news and commentary relating to sound money, the precious metals markets, and the economy. I'm your host, Mike Maharrey. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, happy Black Friday. Now, you might be thinking, if you're listening to this podcast on the day that it comes out, which is Wednesday, well, it's not Black Friday, it's Wednesday. Well, yeah, I know that, but it's still Black Friday. And yesterday was Black Friday. Tomorrow's going to be Black Friday and also Thanksgiving. Heck, last week was Black Friday. And on Friday, it's going to be Black Friday. Now, I'm not going to lie. I kind of miss the days when Black Friday was just one day, on a Friday after Thanksgiving. So, yeah, I know I'm getting old, and old people tend to have a fondness for nostalgia, and that is very true of me. But, am I being unreasonable? I just don't think we need to start the Christmas holiday the day after Halloween, and we don't need to do Black Friday for, 6 weeks. But oh well, nobody asked me. So, you can see what kind of show this is going to be, can't you? It's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Most of us are checked out right now. I'll be honest, I've got my attention focused on turkey and stuffing. And it's going to be a fun show though, right? We've got a show to do. Might as well have fun doing it in the meantime. I do want to thank you sincerely for taking time out of your day to listen to the Midweek Memo. I know there's a lot of stuff out there vying for your attention, a lot of things that you could spend time doing. So it means a lot to me that you spend a little bit of time listening to this show. If you would be so kind as to do me a favor, go to wherever you listen to the show, if you're on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you're listening, and give us a little bit of reviews. Give us those 5 stars if you like the show. It helps boost the show. It puts it higher in the algorithms, and it's one way that you can really help grow the show and in the long run make it better. So if you would do that, I would really appreciate it. Share the episodes. I would really say thank you. So, I was in Washington, D.C. over the weekend. That's another reason that, I'll be honest, I'm kind of dragging today. We got back very, very, very late on Monday night, and I haven't really recovered from that travel. I go to D.C. relatively frequently. My daughter lives there, so, but it was a good trip. And I actually got to do a few videos that will be popping up in our social media feeds here over the next few weeks. I really wanted to go by the Eccles building where the Federal Reserve is. I wanted to do a video there and explain that, hey, this is the place where they decide just how much to devalue your money, every 4 or 5 weeks. That would have been a funny video, but we just couldn't get over there. We were walked out by the time we got to the point where we would have had time to do that. But it would have been funny. But, it is interesting. You go to D.C. and you're just reminded of how many decisions are being made in that city that impact our everyday lives. It's pretty crazy. And speaking of the Federal Reserve and the Eccles building, I wanted to share something that I ran across. A friend of mine named Josh actually posted this, and it was really, really good. And I'm like, gosh, I wish I had thought of that. So, in good form, I'm going to steal it from him and share it with you because I think this is really good. But he said, I find it extremely helpful to see inflation as the purchasing power of the currency decreasing rather than prices rising, right? So normally when we talk about inflation, we mean rising prices, right? We actually gauge inflation based on rising consumer prices. We use the CPI as the gauge for inflation. And as I've explained over and over again on this show, that's not really the correct definition of inflation, or not the technical economic definition of inflation. It is inflation, right? When prices go up, it is price inflation. But it used to be that when we talked about inflation in an economic sense, we meant monetary inflation. We meant the growth of the money supply and the growth of credit. And this results in a number of things. One of those things that it results in is consumer price inflation, which is why we use the CPI. It also shows up in asset price inflation. So a lot of the gains in the stock market over the last few years have been driven by this inflationary pressure. Real estate prices, another great example. So depending on what's going on in the economy, will kind of dictate how that monetary inflation works its way through the system. But I really like the way Josh put that. When we talk about inflation, we really should think of it as the purchasing power of our currency decreasing, not just rising prices. And he goes on, he says, from that point, I can ask the right question. And I've said this before, I really do believe that the government and its enablers in the media and in academia have intentionally kind of muddied the water when it comes to the definition of inflation. They don't want to talk about the increase in the money supply, because when we talk about inflation in that way, we know exactly where it came from, right? It came from the central bank. It came from the government. It came from all of the borrowing and spending. But if we just talk about rising prices, well, a lot of things can cause prices to rise. So it's easier for the government to hide its malfeasance when we talk about inflation in this way. And it kind of obscures the right questions, as Josh put it. So what is the right question? He says, rather than why did Safeway raise the price of milk, I can ask, why can my $2 no longer be traded for a gallon of milk? Right? All things equal, the amount of resources and labor involved in producing the gallon of milk didn't change. It's the value of the money that changed. And then we can ask the question, why? And I just said why, because the central bank continues to expand the money supply. It continues to introduce policies that are designed to expand the money supply. Because, it drives down interest rates, it allows more borrowing and spending, and ultimately, all of this comes down to the fact that it empowers government. Monetary expansion empowers government. It allows the government to borrow and spend more than it otherwise would under normal economic conditions. It makes the government bigger and more powerful. I've said this before. There's no way we would have this giant welfare state in the United States if it wasn't for the Federal Reserve's ability to kind of backstop the borrowing and spending with monetary expansion. So that's what it's all about. So I really thought that was good, and thought I would bring that up because I thought it was worth sharing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Black Friday today because, well, like I said, it's Black Friday, even though it's Wednesday. Tomorrow's going to be Black Friday. And as I noted in the open to the show, the fact that Black Friday is now Black November and December irks me. And the irony is me getting worked up enough about this to talk about it is that I never really liked Black Friday to start with, right? It wasn't one of my favorite things. I can best demonstrate this by telling you what I've really never done on Black Friday, and that is leave the house. That's my tradition. I'm going to stick to it too. Well, I guess I don't really have to stick to it anymore because you really can't have Black Friday traditions because Black Friday really isn't its own thing anymore, and I can just jump online and buy whatever I need to. But, back in the day, back in the 80s and the 70s when, everybody packed up and went out on Black Friday, I did not. So, if we still had that old school one day Black Friday, I wouldn't be there. It's just too people-y out there on Black Friday. And, on top of my desire to avoid hordes of grumpy shoppers, I like to sleep. And Black Friday generally involved getting up really, really early and then standing in line outside of a store for, an hour so we can get in early and get the best deal. And I grew up in Kentucky, and a lot of times, Black Friday was cold. So not only am I up way too early, I'm standing out there freezing my rear end off. And as much as I like to save a few bucks, there isn't a Walmart deal ever conceived that can entice me to go shopping at 5 a.m. The truth is, I have zero desire to go out at the crack of dawn, fight traffic, elbow through a smelly mess of humanity to get into a retail store, risk a fistfight over the last discounted laptop on the shelf, stand in a long line to pay for said discounted laptop, fight traffic some more, and then go home exhausted only to find out somebody broke my El Cheapo laptop during the melee. Yeah, not for me. Now, when I was growing up, my mom, my grandmother, they were some serious Black Friday shoppers. In fact, I think they crammed virtually all of their Christmas shopping into one exhausting day. I remember I was never awake when they actually left the house, but they would roll back home about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and it looked like they'd gone 15 rounds with Mike Tyson. But that was a very different era when Black Friday was a day and not Black November and beyond. Now, think about this a minute. This is kind of a function of Christmas mission creep, isn't it? And I'm not going to lie, this irks me a little bit too, because I love Thanksgiving. And it chaps me that we're basically just phasing it out. I mean, it's important. First off, I think it's important for human beings to give thanks, to sit back and be thankful for all of the things that we have. As difficult as life can be, and as frustrating as the government can be, and, we talk about the devaluation of our money, there are a lot of things to be thankful for. It's a great time to be alive. And so I think Thanksgiving serves an important function in our society just to stop and be thankful and give that kind of remembrance. And if you're a religious person, to give thanks to God, to remember that there's something bigger than us. And then Thanksgiving has a lot of great things about it. First off, you get to sleep late. And as I've already established, I do like to sleep. So that's a plus right there. And then you get a parade, right? You can watch the Macy's parade. And you can see all of the cool floats and the marching bands. And then Santa Claus shows up. So that's fun. And then you have football. I'm a big football guy. And it's even better now. It used to be that the Detroit Lions always play on Thanksgiving Day. And so that's cool. But it didn't used to be cool because nobody wanted to watch the Lions because they were so bad. But now that the Lions are relevant, you even have some good football on Thanksgiving Day. And then there's the food. I love turkey, stuffing, corn pudding, sweet potatoes. It's going to be absolutely amazing. I'm thinking about it and I'm drooling right now. So why don't we, why do we want Christmas to just run right over Thanksgiving? You've heard of the war on Christmas. Well, I'll tell you what, and I didn't make this up. I stole this too, but it's kind of funny. The war on Christmas cannot end until Christmas ends its illegal occupation of November. At least the first 3 weeks of November. I'm okay with Christmas stuff after Thanksgiving. In fact, Black Friday is the day I generally start listening to Christmas music. I absolutely refuse to listen to it before Thanksgiving. And, I was going to say the tree will probably go up this weekend, but it's probably not because we have kittens now, and I think we're not going to even try to do a Christmas tree this year. Those of you with cats and kittens will understand why. But, anyway. So, there you go. So here's some trivia for you. Do you know why they call it Black Friday? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's an awful day. I'm not kidding. Now, I can confirm from experience that Black Friday is an awful day because back in the 90s, I worked part-time at Toys R Us. At the time, I was trying to make a living as a musician, and those of you who are musicians know that usually requires additional employment. So I was at Toys R Us, and I don't know if you guys remember, but back in the 90s, we had the Power Ranger craze. And I'm not kidding. I personally helped break up a physical altercation between two women in a Toys R Us aisle. They were fighting over the last of the season's must-have Power Ranger. Yeah, that's what I think of. That's like the quintessential Black Friday moment for me. Now, You have probably heard that they call it Black Friday because it was traditionally the busiest shopping day of the year, and sales on the day after Thanksgiving typically got retailers, quote, out of the red and into the black, financially speaking, for the first time during the year. But this is pretty much propaganda that was put out by the retail industry because they didn't want negative connotations attached to what was once one of the most important shopping days of the year. Now, obviously, the importance of Black Friday has waned in recent years. It's really more about the entire holiday shopping season from an economic standpoint. So this runs from really Halloween through the end of the year. In fact, as I understand it, Black Friday isn't even the busiest shopping day, if it ever was. The Saturday before Christmas is generally the biggest sales day of the year for retailers. So why is it really called Black Friday? Because I'm serious, the whole thing about, well, the stores are in the black now, that is, in fact, a myth. You can confirm this if you actually trace the lineage of the term Black Friday. Like, it first showed up in the 1950s. The first time that it was ever used in reference to, quote, getting out of the red, an explanation that, this is a good day for retailers. The first time that popped up was in the Philadelphia Inquirer in 1981, which was about 3 decades after the term first showed up at all. I was Googling around kind of trying to confirm this and tracing the lineage of the term Black Friday as best I could, and I ran across a 1985 Philadelphia Inquirer story that I found pretty amusing because it highlights how people in the retail sector at that time were desperately trying to rebrand Black Friday and, make the term a more positive thing. And I'm just going to read this paragraph from this article, and I'll insert a little commentary for context. So the article starts out, it says, quote, "The caller wanted to know," and I'm assuming that the caller here was an interviewer. "The caller wanted to know about retail sales at Hess's department store in Allentown on Black Friday. But the question touched a sensitive nerve for Erwin Greenberg, chairman of the chain. He said, 'That's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard,' snapped Greenberg. And the caller said, 'What, retail sales?' And he said, 'No,' he steamed. 'The term Black Friday is a phrase that's sinful and it's disgusting,' a perturbed Greenberg said. 'Why would anyone call a day when everyone is happy and has smiles on their faces Black Friday?' he asked." So let's be honest. I don't think that dude ever set foot in one of his stores on Black Friday. Because based on my experience working at Toys R Us, people aren't typically happy and smiling. As I've already mentioned, I literally broke up a fight in a Toys R Us on Black Friday. So I thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, so that was in 1985. The earliest known use of the term Black Friday predates that Inquirer article by 3 decades, as I've already mentioned. The term was used first, at least as far as anybody can find, in the journal Factory Management and Maintenance, in an article that was published in 1951. And they used Black Friday to refer to the day that workers were calling in sick on the day after Thanksgiving. At about that same time, cops in Philadelphia started using the term Black Friday and Black Saturday to describe the crowds and traffic congestion as the Christmas shopping season kicked off the weekend after Thanksgiving. You may notice that Philly keeps popping up here. No disrespect to any of you Philly folks, but I've seen your city. I understand why. So, in 1961, a public relations expert recommended rebranding the days Big Friday and Big Saturday, and that went nowhere. The New York Times started using Black Friday to describe the busiest shopping and traffic day in around 1975. Now, you'll notice also that traffic is a reoccurring theme here when we talk about Black Friday. Combine that with long lines of flustered shoppers, surly clerks, and you've got a recipe for unpleasantness. So there you go. As I've already said, they call it Black Friday because it's an awful day. Well, anyway, enjoy Black Friday in whatever manner you choose. If you do go out, I'll remember you as you were. And a friendly reminder, be considerate to your fellow shoppers. Say you're sorry as you shove people out of the way. And make sure you turn your phone horizontally before you video any Black Friday fist fights because you get a better frame that way. And, if you're like me and you don't want to go out, you could just sit at your desk and buy your loved ones the gift of money. No, not the worthless paper printed by the government in Washington, D.C., where I was over the weekend. I'm talking about real money, gold and silver. So check out the Money Metals Black Friday specials. And if you go to moneymetals.com, at the very top of the homepage, you will see in red letters, Holiday Gift Shop. Gift ideas from Money Metals. It's a nice heading. You can't miss it. You click on that. It'll take you to a page where you'll find a lot of Christmas-themed items, great gift ideas for your loved ones. For instance, there's a beautiful half-ounce silver ornament. And, these are high-quality precious metals items. Like I said, perfect gifts. I mean, think about it. Gold was one of the original Christmas gifts, right? 2,000 years later, gold is just as prized and just as sought after, which kind of goes to the value of gold, right? I talk about this all the time. Gold is real money. People have recognized the value of gold since the birth of Christ and before. And makes perfect gifts. You can also go to the top of moneymetals.com and hit specials, and you'll find some stuff that's on sale, some stuff that has low premiums. So check all of that out at moneymetals.com. You don't have to go out and fight any crowds, get in any lines. You can shop right online. We'll ship it right to you. And like I said, some beautiful gift ideas. So make sure you check that out over at moneymetals.com. So before I wrap up the show, I do want to tell you about something that just came out. The Sound Money Defense League, in partnership with Money Metals, publishes a Sound Money Index. And the 2026 index just came out. This is an index that ranks all 50 states using more than a dozen criteria to determine which ones are the most pro-sound money. And of course, it also lets you know which ones are the most anti-sound money. So what we're effectively doing here is we're ranking states based on their sound money policies. And the way it works is each state is awarded points for pro-sound money policies that have been enacted there. So 42% of the points are weighted toward taxes. So we're talking about policies that relate to sales taxes on gold and silver bullion, income taxes, gross revenue taxes, etc. The remaining points are awarded when states pursue other sound money policies, such as recognizing gold and silver's role under the U.S. Constitution, or funding pension funds and stuff with gold and silver reserves, enacting regulations that impact precious metals dealers and investors in a positive way, and other relevant issues. So it's a pretty cool index, and it can kind of tell you how your state fits. If you go to the index, which is over at moneymetals.com, and you can find it at moneymetals.com/resources/sound money index. I'll also link to it on the show notes page. And when you go there, you can actually see on a map very quickly kind of how your state fits in with other states in the union. And you can read through and actually find how your state did and why it received the score that it did. I'll give you a couple of little hints. The best state in the country, based on this index in 2026, is Wyoming. And the state has been there for a while. It passed a new bill this past session, SF 96, which was sponsored by Senator Bob Ide. And it put the Cowboy State on a path to building gold reserves, state gold reserves, with a modest $10 million initial gold acquisition. So very cool things going on in Wyoming. Idaho moved up from 14th in 2025 to second place because of some bills that were passed there last year. And Missouri moved up from 23rd to third place, also with the passage of a bill that provided some comprehensive reforms in terms of sound money. And Who lives in the worst state for sound money? Well, if you're in Washington state, you're the winner or the loser, however you kind of want to look at that. Washington, not a great state for sound money, but definitely check out the Sound Money Index because this is really important. I'm a big believer in bottom-up political action. I don't think that focusing a lot of attention on Washington, D.C. to make sweeping changes is very effective because, let's be honest, if you're not a well-moneyed, well-heeled lobbyist, it's hard to get anybody to pay attention to you in Washington, D.C. I'm sure you've had the experience if you've ever called Congress. You talk to an intern for 5 minutes, and if you're talking about something they like, they'll be friendly to you. If you're urging them to get their guy to vote for something that they don't like, they're not going to be very friendly to you. And then they're going to send you an email, like 3 weeks later, thanking you for calling. But what are you really doing? But you can have a significant impact at the state level by calling your state representative or your state senator. And I don't think a lot of people realize this, but your congressman, he's getting thousands of calls and he's got these lobbyists. A lot of folks in state legislatures, they don't hear much from their constituents. I once talked to a state representative in Kentucky, and he told me he could go through an entire legislative session and never hear one word from a constituent about a bill that was pending. Not one. So you can imagine if these guys start getting, 30, 40 phone calls on a particular piece of legislation, it gets their attention. So doing legislative advocacy at the state level is much easier and has a much higher chance of success than calling your congressman. And I'll be quite honest, I'm not altogether confident that we can ever get significant monetary reform at the federal level. Possibly we could get, capital gains taxes eliminated on gold and silver. That's a possibility. But again, I think enough states are going to have to take action first to drive that change in Washington, D.C. But here's the thing. Even if we can't get the federal government to stop devaluing our money, and as I've already mentioned, money creation is kind of the engine that drives big government. So government is incentivized to do the money creation. It is incentivized to devalue your dollar so that it can borrow and spend. So I don't know that we can change that. I don't know that we can take away the gasoline that is fueling big government. But if we can enact these changes at the state level, if we can eliminate barriers to holding gold and silver, to using gold and silver in transactions, then it will give us an option. It will help us protect ourselves from federal monetary malfeasance. So that's kind of the strategy that is going on over at the Sound Money Defense League. Drive these changes at the state level, work our way up the system to then hopefully drive change at the federal level. And even if we can't change the federal level, we've created an environment in these states where folks can obtain gold and silver, hold on to it, and preserve their wealth. Very important thing, very important work that's going on over at the Sound Money Defense League. You can check out what they're doing over at soundmoneydefense.org. And that's kind of your go-to place for sound money policy at both the state and the federal level, but primarily focusing on the states. And make sure you check out the Sound Money Index. See where your state is, and you also can find some information there about what you can do to help your state improve its standing if it's not where you would hope it would be. So take advantage of it, especially if you're in one of those good sound money states. Well, even if you're not, you need to have gold and silver. You need to have real money because, like I said, the federal government is not going to stop devaluing your dollar anytime soon. Inflation is an intentional policy. They're going to keep doing it. So you need to get gold and silver, and you can do that here at Money Metals. All you got to do is call 800-800-1865, and you can talk to a Money Metals precious metal specialist. You can ask them questions. You can, ask them, hey, what's the best silver product to use? what's the lowest premium product that you've got. These folks are great. They'll help you out there. They'll answer your questions and help you get started investing in gold and silver if you've never done it before, or even if you have. And, if you're the type of person that doesn't like to talk on the phone, you can go to moneymetals.com and chat with a precious metals specialist right online on chat. Or if you know what you want, you don't have to talk to anybody at all. You can order right online. We'll ship it to you, or you can store your metal in our state-of-the-art bullion depository out in Eagle, Idaho. It's a fantastic facility. So that's an option. Remember, check out our Christmas gift ideas. I'm sure there's going to be some stuff over at moneymetals.com, some specials for Black Friday month, or whatever it is. But do that today, 800-800-1865. So with that, it's time for me to get this produced so I can start cooking. We're going to call that a wrap for this episode of the Midweek Memo. You can get more information on everything that I've talked about on the show today and a lot more over at moneymetals.com/news. And if you want to get the latest news and information relating to gold and silver right in your inbox, make sure you sign up and get on our email list. Of course, you can subscribe to the Midweek Memo on your favorite podcasting platform. And when you do, you'll also be able to tune into our Market Wrap podcast every Friday, where you're going to get a quick overview of the week in precious metals, along with conversations between yours truly and interesting people from the world of gold, silver, economics, and investing. Again, thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're willing, give us those likes, those thumbs up, share the episode. Really appreciate it when you folks do that. I hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving holiday. Enjoy the rest of your week. If you're going to go out on Black Friday, be careful and don't get in a fist fight over a toy. Thanks again and have a great week, and we will be back behind the microphone again next Wednesday.